So did you know that back in 2004 to 2006, there were 2 trans women running a legendary underground surgical clinic in a rural tractor barn? Has anyone ever heard of this? Did you know about this? 69 viewers. Nice! So somewhere in the boondocks of America's Pacific Northwest, near the city of Olympia in Washington state, there is a long gravel logging track leading off the main road between a field and a forest. If you follow that track for about a kilometer, you will find a rustic-looking wooden house that has stood there for about a century, with an old tractor barn converted into a small outbuilding. There might be chickens, sheep, and geese honking raucously at your arrival. And if you had entered that tractor barn between 2004 and 2006, you would have found a secret underground transgender surgical clinic run by 2 trans women with an autoclave and a cauterization machine bought on eBay. In an era when trans people were routinely blocked from life-saving healthcare and often discriminated against or abused by medical staff, this clinic aimed to treat its patients with respect and never charged more than $500 for a procedure that usually cost thousands. Despite its clandestine nature, it operated legally. This was legal. Yeah, you really don't see the secret transgender clinics every day. Yeah, this is crazy. It was, according to one of the women behind it, it was even inspected and approved by Washington state health officials. No one was going to take care of us. We had to take care of ourselves, says Eilis Nee Flanagan, a software developer and veteran protest medic who helped set up and run the clinic. Quote, we wanted to make sure that folks would never get a bill in their old name. Simple things like that. They would be able to wake up and be surrounded by trans folks who knew how to take care of them, how to treat them. Never have to worry about getting misgendered. Never have to worry about, oh, what's your real name? Never have to worry about any of that. When I was reading this article earlier, that kind of made me start to cry a little bit. It was like, just like the tender love and care that goes into setting up a whole fucking clinic just for the purpose of like giving people a safe place to wake up from their procedure, you know? Now 50 years old, Nee Flanagan spoke to The Independent about her role in an almost forgotten moment in LGBTQ history. She says, quote, we can't be sitting here looking for, oh, please give us things. No, we're gonna fucking take them. This is the thing people don't realize about trans folks. If you make it so that I can't get access to the things I need to survive, I'm going to find a way to do it. We are a clever people. We will figure out a fucking way to do it. It's like, oh my God, it just makes me so emotional because it like, we are one of those groups that has this like indomitable sort of spirit. Imagine that, healthcare for the purpose of helping people because you care about people. Like, and you care about helping them. Crazy. Started in Philadelphia in the early noughties. Nee Flanagan persuaded her friend Willow, who was a doctor, that she could totally perform life-changing surgery on Nee Flanagan in her adopted trans mother's living room. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right. Nee Flanagan grew up in a working-class Irish-American community in New Jersey. Blah, 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 blah. I'm glad that you put the details about her life. I just really want to hear about the surgery stuff. For trans women, the game plan was to get hormones any way you could, stay on them for a year or so without coming out, burn away your facial hair with electrolysis, then disappear from your old life and go stealth, meaning that no one except other trans people knew that you were trans. You came up through certain ways, Nee Flanagan explains. You came up through the clubs, came up through drag shows, you came up through the support groups. I knew some of these folks. Or you came up through gender clinics. I knew no one from there. That was the rich girl shit. Rich girls got sent to gender clinics. I didn't get into a gender clinic. Nee Flanagan says many trans people were forced into the care of, quote, sketchy doctors who often mistreated them. I was calling up a physician that got his license taken away because he was prescribing one too many narcotics. It was online pharmacies because online pharmacies became a thing. Or if you weren't online, that friend of yours who went to Mexico and brought back a suitcase. This is like some baller shit. And it's like a very good time to be thinking and talking about it because of the threats on our healthcare, all of which helps explain why Nee Flanagan convinced Willow to perform an orchiectomy on her to remove her testicles in a reclining chair, working from photocopied pages of a medical textbook while her trans mom was sleeping off her night shift upstairs. The procedure almost went smoothly, but the instructions for bandaging afterwards were written for cis men whose genitals function very differently than trans women's after a year or two on hormones. 6 hours later, the bandages fell apart and Nee Flanagan was rushed to a hospital. On her first try, she was thrown out for drug-seeking behavior. Yeah, she says, I needed antibiotics, and she only got treatment days later after nearly dying. This experience evidently did not deter Willow, because afterwards, when both women coincidentally found themselves living in Washington state, she made a proposal to Nee Flanagan. Why not start their own orchiectomy clinic? So it's not like they're doing hysterectomies, or anything like that. Like, you can do an orchiectomy. I think you could hypothetically do it under local anesthesia, because it's not much more invasive than getting a vasectomy. And I've seen vasectomies done, and they don't put you under. They give you local anesthetic and like some anxiety medication like trazodone or something like that. And that's pretty much it. And then they do a surgery on you while you're awake and you're there, and you can talk to the doctor while it's happening. So it's not like they're doing top surgery. The procedure is pretty trivial, right? It's a shockingly common thing to DIY, scarily enough. I am not surprised by that. I really am not surprised. Yeah, when I put my mind to something, it's go time. Right. I could not possibly do any of the surgeries that I would want to myself. I guess technically I have done a surgical procedure on my body once. You know those moles that are kind of like skin tags? They're like floppy and they're like loose. It's not quite a mole, like it's different from a mole. I cut one of those off my own body once with no anesthesia or anything. I just like cut it off and it didn't feel great, but now it's gone and it never grew back. Can the DVAG surgery be DIY? Yeah, sure. Let me just cauterize the inside of my vuhuha. I believe it's called bofectomy. True. I mean, you know me. I'm very hardcore trans, and I'm in the middle of a very big anarchist arc. So this is right up my alley, Icalo. Thank you so much for posting that link in the Discord chat. I really appreciate you guys help collate the show that way. Obligatory. It's called an orchidectomy because the whole point is that you keep the D. Yeah. Abigail made that joke in 2 different videos. Happy April. Thank you so much to all of my Patreon supporters, and especially I want to shout out Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvog, Danielle McDonald, Amanda B, R. Halverson, Sarah A, Spooky Heather Sylvia, Michelle Winter, Athiette, Jamie Jam, Wellington Marcus, Elizabeth Bartell, Nova, Sojo, Suzanne Maynard, Mr. Atheist, and Kevin Young.